out of this, we recommend going into gallery view so you can see everyone's shining smiley faces. So just kind of helps as we interact and have discussions here. Also recommend changing your name. As you hover over, you should see that 3 dots to the organization or school you're representing and your name. And then our 2-word check-in today. So when you hover over and select that chat, our 2-word check-in is, as pro sports have been returning, what have you been watching the most of? So go ahead and pop that answer into the chat. While you're answering that, I'm going to introduce to you all Nick Lawson. If you're not familiar, he is the CEO of SQWAD, and we've got some really exciting questions here for us to discuss as a group. So the first question being, what challenges do you currently face when it comes to sponsorship? Second, what are you hearing from your sponsors? You know, what are they asking for? What are their goals in this upcoming season when it's such a crazy season that we're looking at? And then third, how are your sponsors evaluating digital assets? And are they asking for specific metrics or data, so on and so forth? So I know we've got a wide range of knowledge here in our participant base. So just to kind of provide a little bit of background about our happy hours here with From Now On, it's meant to be a very open discussion. So, don't expect us to just kind of be webinaring at you and just, talking right at you. We heavily encourage, unmute yourself, jump into the conversation, share your knowledge and your expertise. If you have any questions and there's a really good discussion going on and you don't want to interrupt, drop that question in the chat. I'll be monitoring it. Nick will be monitoring it so that we can catch any of those questions and be sure to bring them to his attention. So I guess I didn't introduce myself. I'm Sydney Reiners. I'm a customer success coach at From Now On. And without further ado, I will hand things over to Nick.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sydney. I'm excited to chat with you all. For those of you who don't know me, just quick background. I'm CEO at SQWAD, where we help sports teams just connect with fans digitally, which is so important today. So we make different digital activations, and at the core of it, I'm an absolute sponsorship nerd. Everything about sponsorship I consume, I try to analyze, and it's a really interesting time right now just because our entire industry is going through a huge shift of how we're bringing value to our partners and just how we're bringing connecting and conveying those fans to those partners as well, especially if we're not in stadium. So as we kind of get started here, I would love to have this be conversational. You all are just out there in the trenches talking with partners, engaging, all of that. For you, and definitely just chime in, but I'll start this off with, what are the biggest challenges that you're finding with partners as you kind of talk with them? Obviously, schedules are coming out, so we're getting, for some teams, we're getting some sort of semblance of, hey, we actually will have games. I know, it looks like some minor league baseball teams are on here as well, but what's been that biggest struggle for your organization just within talking with sponsors and what they would like to kind of see from you all? I might call somebody out, so I might call Chris out just for his mustache. Chris, for you all at Virginia Tech, what are you all seeing kind of with partners, and what challenges are you kind of facing?
Yeah, I think up until today, really, when we got our schedule and times and dates today, it was all about, what's it going to look like? When are the games? Who are we playing? All that. So that was the biggest thing that everybody kept on hitting on. And now are we having fans? What is that going to look like? Even some are coming to us and, they're all asking about how are we going to make up, whatever assets they have. And that's kind of our big push this upcoming week is we have a huge make good document. We're going to go through it with all the sellers, and we're going to figure out what adds up to equal the value of what the sponsor may have lost. So yeah, that's really the big hitting point for a lot of our sponsors in the past couple of weeks here.
Awesome. Anyone else? Any other challenges you're seeing? I mean, other than the typical, hey, or I guess I'll ask it this way too. Have sponsors really waited for games to come back for you all and kind of have that, I guess that solidifying that we will have games, or has it just kind of been, hey, we're going to wait and see until we know that those games are coming back?
This is Murray from Southern Miss. Our sponsors basically don't know what capacity we're going to be operating at in terms of attendance. And so for them, trying to figure out what they would want to do in game has been challenging. We're not doing any on-field promotions, any on-field recognitions this year. So trying to be creative and come up with either video board content or social content, stuff like that. So that's been the biggest struggle. And then on top of that, we have IMG, so all of our sponsorship sales are technically outsourced. And so the time frame of when they have gotten back in the office and when we got back has been off. So just trying to kind of get everybody caught up and on the same page in a short amount of time has been a bit of a struggle.
I can jump into this. Is Rachel with Virginia Tech. Something else I think that we've seen is some of the needs and what the sponsor wants out of their deal has changed a little bit. And so, maybe before it was a little more branding and maybe now it's more community feeling type of things. And so, originally we were kind of matching, okay, we have this asset, they did branding, what branding piece can we find? And I think the more we've talked with people, we found like, we really need to listen to them first and make sure that what we're doing the make good is fulfilling what their needs are now and not necessarily when, they sign the deal. Because, I think we're all in it for the long run. We're not just trying to get something quickly done right now. So.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing here is just everything has shifted from the teams we're talking with. What your sponsors wanted 2 weeks ago has totally changed, and what category, just within that category, what they're wanted has totally changed. And I think flexibility is going to be really key here. But I'll also kind of throw this question out. Obviously maybe the goal has changed, but has the metric changed at all? Did it go from, hey, we're going to be very sales centric on couponing, pieces coming in, or hey, we're going to be more awareness based just because we understand that people aren't going to be spending those dollars. And then if anybody's been able to shift their assets to kind of engage with that.
Nick, I'll jump in. I represent USF via the Vinnick Sports Group. I think you spoke with our friend of mine, Nate Black, recently.
Yep.
So thanks for having us out. I think from, it's just, you mentioned the couponing side and the shifting. I think it depends on the industry. From what we've heard from a lot of our restaurant partners right now, that's been the primary source of a lot of that vouchering or couponing. But as much as hurting they are, I think there's a little bit of reluctance to kind of get back into that because they're trying to maximize any revenue they can. So whereas that used to be more of a medium or model for them, I think that's shifted a little bit too. And then also just driving more what would have been traffic before isn't as, especially down in Florida right now, there's not a lot of desire to drive traffic. It's not the best optics and it's just not, necessarily feasible. So that changes too as well. So then it becomes maybe more of an awareness, how you can drive awareness for takeout, any type of offerings. But we found too that a lot of those those industries, they've had modified menus. So things are reduced already. So they're not necessarily operating on the same sort of capacity they were operating before.
That's a great point. And I'll dive back in with you with a follow-up. For restaurants, which are just getting, hammered right now, have you had to bring down kind of package size and, create a more flexible asset for them? Or has the spend been, still up there?
I'd say it's modified, yes. That there's, it depends on the relationship. Some we've heard where they've said like, we want to be a partner, we want to support. But right now we're in zero marketing. Like they don't have it. Right. So, and then there's others that are, if they're in contracts, it's just how do we shift what we have, and then how do we, combat. I've heard a couple of folks say, right, like on-field promotions are gone. What do stadium capacities look like? And then how do you, still even engage with people at this point to do kind of the same of the things that would kick off some sort of prize pack or something on those lines. So I think in those cases now it's trying to find other means. But for those either renewal partners or new partners, especially in that category, it's definitely adjusting down to scale.
And then last question to pick on you, Michael.
Yeah, good.
For, because I just geek out on this stuff, especially since you all are out there selling. I'm a second party. I'm helping teams kind of sell. As you maybe adjust those packages, what are some of the ways that you're seeing to make up that revenue? Just because obviously at the beginning of the year you had a number, you were hoping to hit it, you probably adjusted it down a little bit. Are there new assets or new avenues that you're looking at to kind of still try to hit that number you were trying to hit? And then, how do you replace that revenue?
That's a great question, because I think that's the multi-million-dollar question at this point. Right. Like, I think that we're already anticipating, some losses overall as we're looking at the type of deals. So how do you make those up? And then with the uncertainty, when, some of those, I guess, tentpole partners or those that, are kind of more foundry or foundational in the sense that they are able to rely on those a little bit more, how do you tap into a partner like that or find new ways? So, we've looked a lot at, we mimic because we work with the Lightning side of the professional side. So we look at what we're doing in that capacity. So season presenting partnerships, how do we continue those and build those programs out? How do we kind of wrap across, the rivalry type of initiatives that could carry across sport as well, and then build some steam and build across. So we're not just relying on the fall. But nonetheless, football still is the driver. So I think it's just looking at within those, and transferring, like, again, I think I heard maybe it was the initial one or two that jumped out, like, how do you take what we're doing already and bring it to social platforms, bring it to digital platforms in a way that, you can still quantify, right? And just as you would with Gates, you can still say people are now viewing it, it might be different in that capacity, or might not be as much, but I can say, for at least from our perspective, a lot of the content that we were running in game from a partner perspective wasn't necessarily translating or carrying over into social now. So is that a new opportunity? Is that something there where we can still keep some of that alive so we're able to retain revenue? And then for partners coming in, we're trying to take approach, and it's changing daily, right? Like, every time I feel like there's a positive article for the fall, there's like one that's where it's going to unravel slowly. So watch out, so we're trying to guide our partners from a lens of normalcy to a certain extent. Like, hey, we've got to look at this as it would be before. So there's some of the traditional elements that we would include. But then our kind of reassurance, right after saying that, is that, look, we're going to put protections into the contract. We're going to put, language in there to ensure that we're able to, make good on ultimately if something does change, and something does need to be adjusted. And even in some cases, ideating around and brainstorming right now, like, hey, if we're talking about doing this next year, a kiss cam, kind of hard to do nowadays. So what does that alternative look like, and what are some ideas that we can get around that might make sense? And that if we know that likelihood is going to be very great that that's not going to happen. So is it, a social component where then you're highlighting people, that, are in a different way. So I think that coming up with those ideas in advance and allowing that to be part of the conversation can help ease their concerns.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Whoever's jumping in. John.
This is John from Florida. I just wanted to chime in and say, like all these other businesses across the country, we've all, we've heard the term, the new norm and pivoting and this and that. And I really think we're all doing that and just trying to figure out, different, more creative ways to package, some opportunities to deliver the impressions and deliver the value to the clients. Recently we had a discussion down here in Gainesville, if there's 90,000 fans at the Swamp, let's just say for 6 games, that's 500,000 fans, but we're not going to be able to draw 90,000 fans this year. We don't know what that's going to be. Maybe it's no fans, maybe it's 10,000 fans. And so when you start talking to some partners about, hey, what does that look like as far as, putting you in front of 500,000 fans over a three-month period of time. Well, you know, I mean, let's go to our digital assets, our new digital platforms, our social platforms. Let's go to our 35 station radio network from an impression standpoint with the reach and the frequency and going in. I mean, some of this stuff, it kind of already exists for us, but it's really making us focus in more detail on the value of the network radio broadcasts, of the value of reaching people on, you know, digital platforms, of the value of the social media platforms. And so a lot of people are still in a wait and see mode because they're waiting to find out our schedule. First of all, like the SEC wants to be the last conference to officially maybe release the big schedule. Everybody's holding their breath, right? And I think, you know, you see a lot of excitement right now about the other leagues, you know, ACC, Big Ten, all these schedules are being released, the Pac-12. That's a big deal. So I think once we get that, I think we're going to have a lot more traction with some of these partners who've been just kind of wait and see attitude. Like, oh, you say you're going to play. Are you going to play? I mean, these are dangerous times, but, you know, if we can get that scheduled, then yes, we can say we're playing, and let's be careful, be safe, and plan on it. And we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just saying, you know, the mindset of figuring out how we can make up for some of those impressions on the front end has really made us take a deep dive into our existing assets and maybe, you know, remember what real value they really do have.
Yeah, I think that's key. One thing we've been talking with our teams about is there's really three scenarios. There's some fans in stadium, but obviously not full, so we still have to reach them. There's no fans in stadium, so we still have to figure out a way to reach them. And then I always knock on wood on this, there's no games. We have another shutdown. I mean, that sponsor still wants to reach 500,000 fans. I think our job in the sponsorship world is they have a goal, whether it's awareness, whether it's sending coupons, whether it's leads. You know, if we're able to go to our sponsor with, hey, look, if we have some fans in the stadium, we're expecting, you know, 25,000 over the year. There's that, but we're also going to have this, you know, Twitter series on game day that's also going to reach that. You know, if we have no fans, here's how we're going to still help you reach 500,000. If we have, you know, no games, here's still how we can do that. And I think a lot of our digital pieces will do that. I'm massively curious on the sponsorship side, how they're kind of now looking at what was an in-stadium view compared to what a digital view is. I feel like some of them may be a little bit more old school and think, hey, a stadium view is still in that passionate environment. And then you flip that, some of them say, hey, a digital view might be even worth more because we can add a Twitter tag for what company that is. And if somebody clicks through on that tag, that's massively more valuable than just somebody seeing it, right? And then that brings up the conundrum when we do get games back. Are we now telling them that stadium signs aren't as valuable as maybe a digital view is? So I think that's, and I'd love to kind of hear your all feedback as you're kind of selling that is, you know, as we replace these sort of items, you know, are your sponsors sort of seeing a digital view as more valuable than maybe what an in-stadium view or a signage view would have been?
Nick, it's Anderson out in Bowling Green. What's going on? I think the biggest thing that we're seeing with that is it's so trackable, right? So I think, you know, when we get into the digital side and now we can see the trackable inventory and they can see, in their term, the ROI, you know, then that's what they want. And then, you know, you can't tell, you know, we can't track how many people looked at your sign or your dasher at hockey or whatever it might be and say, yeah, you know, we had 16 people walk into our store, but I can tell you, you know, these many people clicked through and we got a name grab off of that. So I think, but you've got to have, I think we have to have an equal mix of both still. And that's what's hard right now with, you know, not knowing what's going to go on. I mean, the MAC still hasn't announced yet what we're even going to do with football yet. And so, but if we can have that digital piece where they can feel that warm fuzzy until we know what's going to happen, then that's helpful. But until then, right now, we're just, you know, you're kind of in limbo. But I think, you know, they're going to want to see that digital piece because of the trackable inventory. And then you've got to still have the analog, if you will, of just so people can have that eye candy when they go into your stadium still.
Yeah.
We did have a question come into the chat from Chris as far as, and I'll just open this up to the full group, of course, but what are some new make goods other properties are doing? Just things that are maybe outside of the norm.
I mean, I'll highlight Dave over at BGSU. Your home, what was the meal program you did?
Meals for Heroes.
Was Meals for Heroes, which was hugely trackable. Can you just dive into kind of that and how it helped with the sponsor when, you know, you were trying to get this make good going?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of this, and all the restaurants were just, it was a dumpster fire, and everybody was taking a bloodbath on it. So we just did it through FIVO, and you could hop on the website, and a $6 donation provided a meal for a hero in town. And we did it for all different heroes. So we started off with our medical workers, then we went to police and fire, and then we ended with our grocery stores. And what we tried to do is have heroes help heroes. So our first one was a restaurant in town that was a partner, provided meals to the hospital workers, and that worked out really well. And then the second one was fire and police, another local partner provided those meals. And then we ended with the grocery stores, and our three big stores, Kroger, Meijer, Walmart, and they're all three partners of ours at FSP, and we had another food partner provide them. So what we saw with that, which was really nice, is those people that we provided the meals to then went back to those restaurants and bought meals. So we saw the reciprocal on that, where that worked out really well. And in 3 weeks, in our little town of Bowling Green of 14,000, we brought in $7,000 donated from our fans that we were able to buy meals. So we provided 500 meals at each place. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, what I loved about that is just trackability for your partners. You could say, hey, look, here's how many dollars were put back into your restaurant. And, as much as restaurants like awareness and consideration at that moment, the most important things was dollars. And that just helps you prove the value instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do a promoted sponsored tweet. Those are great, for the bigger organizations that consideration is a big piece of, or maybe a longer buying process. But at that moment, that restaurant needed those purchases, and what a great community asset to be able to utilize to kind of tie that into.
And the one restaurant actually was on the verge of closing their doors until we did that. They were just going to wait this out until they got CARES money, and we were able to pump in about $3,000 into their restaurant for 1 week, and that kept them going. And then people kept supporting them after, and they're doing great. They actually just opened a new store, so it's working out well.
That's the stories where I always say what you do today will reverberate, right? Like that story builds a relationship around your campus, your organization, help them stay open. And not only will they tell other people about that on the sponsorship side, but you've just hopefully created a customer for life that will always, keep purchasing with you. Any other make good stories for you all as we kind of dive in here?
Kind of on that, I'd be curious if anyone has things like reaching students specifically. That's something, I know we talk a lot about fans in general, but reaching specifically that student population is something we're trying to dive into a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say that over the years, whether, when I was at Penn State or Pitt or Michigan State and now Florida, sometimes our student housing partners would be very excited to be approached about ideas to reach those students. I mean, they're trying to reach them more than we can believe sometimes. And so even down here, we've, Mike Dearman, one of my teammates, he just, re-signed somebody with a student housing properties, but it's with the whole idea that this is the comeback, the 2020 comeback, the kids are coming back to school. How can we reach them, whether they're at the games or not, whether they're allowed to go to the games or not? Can we still keep that mojo, that momentum for Gators football, in their inbox, in their social feeds? So we're working on some things like that. And I don't know, I would start there if you have some really good, partners from a student housing standpoint. And then, and this is all common sense stuff that most, these ideas aren't original, but also the other thing is just relationships. If you have really good relationships, obviously with your athletic department, your social media directors for for all the sports, not just the big sports. You know, you never know. Maybe there's a way to conjure up some extra knowledge, you know, of the student fan base that they might have that they're just sitting on. And because some of our partners, no doubt, they've said, man, if there's no students, I can't keep my doors open. If there's no students. So I'm not just, I mean, I'm not talking about just the apartment complexes. Those are just my resources, but there's a lot of people that are interested in that. Even though we say, you know, that only a certain percentage of our fan base are the students, it's a very important part of the fan base. And we have partners who really do want to invest, you know, in that demographic. But that's just my thought on it.
Yeah, we just set up with a team, we're getting set up a scratch and win for the bookstore. And that's, you know, honestly, never working in the college sponsorship space. That's a sponsor I always forget about. But it's just a way that, you know, in the same way they can give out offers for items or let students know what items are for sale. If they're not going to be on campus, here's a digital scratch and win. It's on our Instagram stories. It's a way to kind of drive sales. So you definitely can kind of focus that value, and then, you know, again, recreate it a little bit with, you know, some sort of digital asset that even if they're not on campus, you can still prove that you're reaching those students and bring them in. As we, you know, as we kind of shift here a little bit, I'm really interested just in, you know, kind of the trackability side of things for you all. You know, are your sponsors changing just the way they're judging you on this? Meaning, you know, in the past you got this many views, this many coupons distributed, this many coming in. Has that changed at all for some of you as they're saying, hey, look, I get it. We're probably not going to have students on campus or people in the stadiums. Let's change that, dial that down, or is it kind of staying really high and saying, hey, you have to kind of reach this goal? I know for us with some of the, you know, we would do a lot of work with the Portland Winterhawks here in town, and it's kind of been a mix of that piece. Again, just shifting kind of the trackability piece of it. Hey, we gave out a ton of coupons. We understand you're not going to have this many fans kind of in the building. Let's switch that. I would much rather have them land on my page and get more information about our product or things like that instead of coming into the store. So we've seen maybe a shift in goal there to where, hey, instead of having this many people come in and purchase with the 10%, how many people can we get to come to a virtual page here to kind of engage with this? And hopefully that leads back down. A lot of them are pixeling with a Facebook pixel. So obviously you're building the ability to retarget, but we've kind of seen that shift a little bit just in, you know, again, we still want you to drive traffic. It's just to a different place because we're adding one more step that we can grab some information and go retarget on that side.
I'll chime in again, Nick, real quick. I mean, these are great conversations. You know, before I got into college sports, you know, I operated minor league hockey and baseball teams. And so some of our planning was a lot of the stuff that people do, like if they're going to present us one night or be a sponsor of a big game, we always say that everything you're doing leading up to that game is what you're paying for. You know, I can't tell you if it's going to rain and there's not going to be 7,000 fans, maybe there's 2,000 fans for a minor league baseball game. You know, similar to what we do, like they're buying these sports marketing partnerships, these season-long campaigns, and you know, we don't know if there's going to be, you know, it's for some schools or some teams. I mean, you don't know if you're going to sell out the game, or you don't know if it's going to be bad weather or people can't make it. So, like everything you're buying leading up to one event sponsorship is what you're already paying for, the digital, the social, the radio, all that stuff. But when you get there, you mentioned something earlier, you know, how are we going to sell that sign again next year, right? In front of 90,000 people, is it going to still have the same value? And I still think it will. It might even be more valuable because even though, like I just said, you know, you're paying for your entire season game plan, but you know, there's still that sense of you know, it's like a reality show, you know, 90,000 people at the Swamp for 4 hours looking at your sign. I mean, you know, let's just do the numbers. Let's crunch it. What does that equal? How many impressions is that? How many times are they seeing your hashtag? You know, so there's still that excitement of that piece. But from a trackability standpoint, right now concentrating, kind of going back to my old school way of thinking of, basically saying, hey, you're not paying for butts in the seats probably this year. So you're going to pay for impressions, and we're going to figure out a way to track that, because it's not just a one-off. It's not one hit on social media on a Saturday and you hope people see it. It's like you're going to have a 10-week campaign, and this is how it's going to look. And let's try to get those 500,000 impressions.
Yeah, for sure. Any questions kind of from the group for me or Sydney or anyone on that end, just on digital activation, digital engagement? I'm sure, I'm sure you all are kind of looking for make goods. Is there any questions for us as we kind of create those assets that we can kind of give you advice on, just, as people on the other side of the table to kind of provide these solutions?
Nick,
We did good. Oh.
what's one thing that's really you're seeing take off for you right now with the teams and that you're working with currently?
The biggest thing with our digital stuff is just first and foremost is context. We have a prediction game. It's obviously just a prediction game. You've seen it as well, but what it is taking it from just, hey, predict some sort of piece here, but switching it into, hey, this is the longest drive prediction game. So now there's a car partner. Okay, now I'm intrigued because there's context here. Car partners obviously want leads, right? So you're entering an email into play. There's your second kind of gear there. And then the third thing is, a lot of car partners are trying to replace that boothing of face-to-face connection. When I think of what I'm going to buy a car, maybe not thinking Toyota, but thinking who the dealer is, right? So then kind of taking that and saying, have your dealers make predictions as well. And then, post on your Twitter, hey, this is what Sally from Toyota predicted. Can you beat her prediction? And if you just go out there with a digital activation and say, hey, this is a trivia. Do you want to buy this? Hey, this is a scratch and win. Do you want to buy this? That's not going to get as much success as saying, hey, what are your goals? Your goal is to connect your dealers, your salespeople with fans. Let's tie it in with the longest drive, predict the longest offensive drive in yards, and you win a prize. That's what I'm seeing take off, as opposed to just saying, here's a scratch and win, it's great for coupons. So I think as you think about this, we really want to tell that story with that asset and really be able to say, hey, again, here's your goals. Here's how we're going to get the fan from A to B, but also I'm putting some time and some work into trying to understand what you need. And here's an activation that's going to be able to do that. Those are being sold very fast right now, as opposed to the ones that are just, hey, here's a scratch and win, gives out coupons, gains emails. Is pretty cool. Any other questions for us?
Like I said, to that end, obviously to get to that level, you got to have a pretty engaged fan base that's, willing to adopt and willing to kind of get in there. So you have two groups, right? You got your alumni and then you got your students. And so, both you need to speak to, but how do you, I guess, I think the challenge is, it's also how there's an awareness play. There's almost like a campaign that needs to be implemented, overall beforehand to get people to get it. But then, at the same time, you need to have the enticements and the ways of an understanding of what they're getting into. So I'm just curious, and maybe just thinking of what are some of the ways, and maybe the markets that aren't early adopters or that maybe aren't as tech savvy, or maybe at least just from the rates already of what we're seeing, either engagements on their social channels and some of the digital channels that might not be as heavy. What are some ways to maybe drive that awareness or get some of that adoptability out there?
Yeah, I think from what we've seen kind of three ways. The first is a prize. Fans just like to win stuff, and the better the prize, even if it's just 1% of the fan base winning that prize, the better the prize, the more they'll kind of buy in and try to engage with it. So prizing is first and foremost. Whenever, put that prize on the promotion that you're doing. The second thing is just easy. How easy is this? Like, how many times am I entering a password in? How many times am I entering an email in? Are you asking for 10 different qualifying questions? Every step that you build friction there is a step that they get distracted and sign off, or they just leave. So, especially for that older non-tech savvy fan base that, we like to say as an excuse for why we haven't launched a digital activation. If you make it crazy easy, they will be able to use it. A lot of times they have smartphones. That's a common misconception that, older fans just have flip phones. And then I think the third thing too is just time. Are you promoting this, and kind of to John's point, are you promoting this the week before a game, or are you promoting this 10 minutes before kickoff and then doing another tweet about the starting lineup, right? If you're not educating your fan on that activation, then how are they going to know or get excited about it? So I think whenever we talk to fan teams that have said, hey, our fans aren't engaged with things like this, we usually sit them down and say, hey, look, what's going to be that really great prize? A signed helmet, an individual Zoom call with your coach if it's a non-physical thing. Make that the priority. Only 1% of the fan base will win it, but make that the priority. Again, the second thing is as easy as possible to see a tweet, click, enter an email, win, get the email. And then the third thing is just time. A lot of things there. And I guess I would say the fourth thing is, very few times do you see a rocket ship with these things. It might take a month to really hit that critical mass of fans coming in and playing. And if your first activation only gets 30, 40, 50 people, don't just say, hey, this isn't going to work. If you can come back the next game, make some tweaks, you're going to get an increase because the people who played the first time will still be there. You're going to gain more followers and you'll get this kind of steady uptick. Obviously, your sponsors want to see this just sharp increase in 10,000 people playing, but sometimes it does take time for fan bases to get engaged and get interacted and buy into that. So I think those are the big four things. And if you implement those, you'll see that you will get larger engagement, even if you haven't seen engagement in the past on those contests.
Yeah, and I'll mirror that sentiment. Just, with anything new that you introduce to fans, there's going to be a learning curve. So, just being patient with that, and even showing them how to engage with this content, and then just setting an expectation. So if you're doing something like trivia or a scratcher or a check-in each week, that you're setting that expectation of when they can expect it. Because if they don't win the first time, they're going to look to win, maybe next time. And so setting that expectation and being patient with that learning curve. But that, having that expectation for those fans just goes a long way. And then also just mirroring that sentiment as far as, the less taps to engage, the better. The more straightforward. If it's, one tap to open, one tap to check in, there you are. You're entered to win. And so I think, just ease of access, and then, learning and being patient with them and showing them, holding their hand a little bit, especially since, for some of these fans, it's kind of a new introduction into engaging more in digital versus being on site and, filling something out and dropping it into a raffle. And so just to be understanding and hold their hand along the way.
Yeah, and I think also too, you're going to try stuff that doesn't work. You're going to have to cut things, right? I would give it some time, some love, but what I tell a lot of our clients is, if scratch and win hasn't worked after 4 months or 3 months or 2 months, and you've given it the love, then let's find something else. Let's find something that will work. And nothing's worse than when you launch something, your fans don't like it, your sponsors therefore aren't getting the engagement, and then you just stick with it because, hey, we already bought this, or hey, we already engaged with this, or we committed to it. I think, again, give it the time, give it some love. Don't not market it and not engage fans, but be totally fine with saying, hey, this activation just didn't work. We're going to go look at the next activation, and we're going to go look at the next piece. And your first 3 might totally fail with the sponsor, and hopefully your sponsor understands that you're trying some stuff out, but that fourth one might be the thing that just, brings in a ton of sales. So I think there we just have to be very flexible with whatever we're doing digitally, to say our coaches show, well, we gave it 3, 4 or 5 weeks and nobody really came on. Did we really give it the love and the marketing and push it forward? Yes. All right, maybe our fans don't want a coaching show right now. Maybe they will later, but at this moment, it's not an asset that fits that. So I think your fans are going to give you a lot of that feedback about, whether it's you or whether it's, something else. A big case study we did with a team was, a sponsor was giving out a free oil change and they weren't seeing redemptions, and therefore fans weren't playing because the only thing you could win was a free oil change. And they kind of stuck with it. And then we offered a signed jersey, and the signed jersey, next thing you know, we had 6 times the amount of people playing. And then also over 4 months, we saw that oil changes were trickling in for those coupons. So it's giving enough time to say, hey, we're making adjustments. But at the same time, if literally nobody came in with that oil change coupon, I would have told them, hey, look, we have to change the offer, or if the sponsor is really hell-bent on that, this might not be the right activation to kind of work with them, and we'll have to change it up, whether it's one of our activations or something else that you're doing. So I think this is definitely a time to be testing things out and iterating, and again, give it the love and give it the time, but be totally fine with just cutting on something that's not producing.
You know what, Nick, you're so right. I think our partners, that everybody's going through crazy times, right? So they respect the challenges that we face. They respect the hard work that we're putting in to maybe put something together that will work for them. And to your point, they'll respect even more, I think, if you go back to them and say, hey, you know what? I'm tracking this for you in case, I know you are too, but it's not really adding up right now. Here's plan B that we're ready to go with. What do you think? Go. Because the days of waiting till the end of a season, to do a year in review and say, this is what we did, those are over. I mean, people, these are different times, and in digital campaigns and radio campaigns and social campaigns. I mean, that's the whole idea, is that's a real time fix. It's not we spent $4,000 to put that sign up there on the scoreboard. It's up there all year, And so to your point, I applaud what you just said. I'm a big fan of that. You can't, it's the old, what's the definition of insanity, right? You just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, but you get the same results. So you can't do that. So I like it.
And I get really excited about the digital side because you can be flexible. To your point, when somebody buys a sign, if halfway through the season they're not seeing sales, they've already paid the $4,000. And as we talk about sponsorship, we're talking about advertising. Brands today are thinking, do I buy a Facebook ad or do I buy a sign? Well, a Facebook ad, if it doesn't work in 5 days, you can turn it off, right? And for a sign, this is a huge commitment. So one thing that these new digital assets do is allow us to get crazy creative, right? Like, what if we did this? Let's try this for 3 weeks. I'm going to charge you only for 3 weeks. If you want to continue, let's continue that package. And then from there, if it didn't work, okay, cool, let's try this now. And digital just gives you the flexibility to do that. Whereas, again, not knocking signs, but the most frustrating thing was you knew when a sponsor wasn't happy with the signage sale a month into the season. And it's just that soul crushing of, I'm going to have to give you the renewal call. And I know you're not going to be happy. And I'm going to have to figure out some way to show you why this helped. And there is that with the non-flexibility. Whereas again, a digital, like literally if after 2 weeks, a Twitter campaign or a coach's show doesn't work, just honestly cut it off and try something new.
This is sort of switching gears a little bit, but something that I kind of have been thinking about recently is all of these European soccer leagues, and I honestly don't follow soccer very much, but I have a soccer intern right now and she's been telling me about it. Anyway, she's never been to one of their games, and there's a lot of different teams where they haven't been to actually any of the games, but they're such avid fans. And I think we kind of are thinking like, oh, this is going to be so bad, we don't have fans or whatnot, but there are a lot of teams that have dealt with that for a while now, or even probably on the professional league. And it's probably not like a mind-blowing thought or anything, but I don't know if anyone has dove into some of what those other teams have done to keep some of those fans.
Yeah, I mean, we work with Wolfsburg over in Germany and Bundesliga, and this was also kind of the thing where I kind of asked, hey, you don't have fans in the stands. How are your sponsors feeling about it? And he said, to be honest, most of our following is outside of Wolfsburg, and through digital, through social, through some of these things, especially in America, it's not as big of a hit. And that's a great point. Like how, I mean, obviously nothing can create that feeling you get when you walk into the stadium and building on that. But one, are there ways that we can bring the stadium to them and that experience to them? And then two, that just opens the pot for engagement on that side. So I think this is a crucial and clutch time to test some of those things out and say, hey, can we really live with no fans in our stadium? Because if we can get the same engagement, same views, same reach for the fans outside of the stadium, then what happens when fans come back? We're going to have double the assets. We're going to have double the value. I've just doubled, what I've created. And I think big thing to that is, we have a scoreboard right now. I think it's 34 billion we've lost in the industry. How are we as an industry going to make that up? And we'll be able to look back and say, hey, did we make up that revenue? Did we engage our fans outside the stadium? Did we add these social media pieces that we can get sponsored? And if we come out of this and we have made up that revenue without the in-stadium signage, then that's great. But then I see our industry taking off from there because now we have these assets outside the stadium that we can engage with. So I think that is kind of the next progression, to your point, Rachel, of North American sports, is how can we get those fans who are not in our stadium to be engaged as much as the ones that are and have the same value, so that we don't have to rely on as many in-stadium assets as maybe we do now.
I'll chime in again, Nick. Something you said earlier is still sticking with me, which I commented on it, but about knowing your client's goals, talking to them about what are their goals. And I think, I've been guilty of this, and I've had to catch myself, but I mean, these are different and new times. So every client that we've been doing business with these last several years, if we thought we knew what their goals were, you got to throw that out the window, and you got to do that new fact find on a Zoom call or a phone call or whatever, and just make sure you're on the same page, because, they've been pivoting too. They've been trying to figure out better ways to do business, fast food places. I was at a Five Guys Burger in Gainesville the other day, and they're like, oh, this location's making 2.5 times the revenue versus last year at this time, and it's all takeout. We're not even letting people sit in our restaurant for the last 5 months, And so, I sort of knew that, but I guess the point is, all these assets that you're talking about, like the value of digital, I mean, all these things I think can help people achieve their new goals. We just need to make sure we know what they are, because to put a bow on it, no sense in doing something that's not going to work if we didn't understand that they ditched that campaign like 6 months ago, and they have this new game plan,
Yeah, and I think, the one thing we're working through with the Winterhawks on that point is Toyota. We did trivia for the last 2 years with them, was massively successful. The way they did is they had a fan win, first 100 to win, go to a booth, a physical touch point, show the email, receive a Toyota puck, Winterhawk co-branded puck, got tickets, went into the stadium, right? Their goal was to reach car buyers. Now what we just have to think through, because they have that same goal, is, okay, we can't have people go up to a booth and actually hand something over. We can't have people win tickets because we don't have that in the stadium. If we can backtrack from that goal, no matter how many times it's changing, to say, let's build this activation game plan to where we're starting here, we're ending here at your goal. That's really, honestly, as we think through these new times and all of that, it's really just saying, great, this was the plan here. Let's take it, let's throw it away. Let's keep the key points you had of what you wanted to achieve. Here's how I think we can recreate that. On a previous Zoom call that I just did, I kind of brought up the point of Moneyball. I'm from the Bay Area. I grew up during the Moneyball era. I was very upset when the A's were going on their losing streak, but the thing is, you lose 3 all-stars, you have to recreate them. The end goal is to get wins. Honestly, it's not how you get those wins. If you have some, what the league sees as scrub players to come in and do that, you're going to get wins. I think the same thing here is, yeah, we don't have our stadiums. Yeah, we don't have our boothing. Yeah, we don't have our signage. We can't give away tickets. But how can we recreate that so that they're still feeling like, you know what, we really still can get these wins here. So, it's almost drawing a circle around sponsor goal, fan. What's the map to get there? This used to be boothing, throw that away. What creative way can we put in there? Whether it's a Zoom pregame, call with a dealer on there who knows a ton about hockey, and they're just giving us, giving fans their insight, right? I mean, that's building that face-to-face that a booth does. So I think, I'm a very visual person, undergrad degree in art, but literally literally what I do is just map it out. Here's the fan. They're I'll use Virginia Tech. They're a Virginia Tech fan. Here's the dealer, literally like a person at a dealership. What are all the touch points that we need to hit to get there? How did we do it in the past? What worked in the past? What didn't work in the past? Great, let's swap those things. Try it. Okay, this is where the fan is now getting stuck, where we're not getting anybody through. Let's switch that. What if we did this? No, let's switch that. Okay, great, we got them through here. And I think that's the biggest challenge we have is just, we know psychologically how our fans interact and move through. I think the last piece is just replacing those assets and getting them through that goal. And then obviously walking into a sponsor's, a meeting with the sponsor, whether it's Zoom or in person, and saying, here's our fan, here's your end goal, here's the path to it. This is what we think is going to work. And then, to John's point, a week later, hey, here's where we're getting stuck. I think we should do this. What's your feedback? No, I don't really think, I was on with the bank and I said, hey, I think putting your tellers into the advertising will really help replace that boothing. And they were just like, to be honest, our tellers have high turnover. So, building brand with this teller is not going to work. Okay, great. That's great feedback from you. Let's switch it. Let's make that switch here so that we're not integrating with tellers, but maybe a banking location. And you're not putting a face to a name, but it's your local branch. I think that's the conversation that really needs to happen between sponsors, because one, then to John's point, you're in it together, right? Like, I'm in this with you. You're spending dollars with me. Here's how we're going to get it done. And then, having those weekly, bi-weekly, monthly of here's the map. Here's what we thought was going to work. We switched it here and here's what worked. We're stuck here. Do you have any insights for how we can get from here to here? And, any great marketer at a brand who loves their job is going to say, you know what, that's a great creative problem we can help solve. I think we can do it by doing this. So I think that's going to be a key piece toward that end goal of, you don't have to really create the wheel. You just have to see what worked in the past, replace those digital assets, and then test it. And it's going to be frustrating. It's going to suck. There's going to be times you walk up to that sponsor and say, nothing worked. Here's the new plan. But I think just building that trust with your partner is going to be key from now until moving forward as well.
Thanks, Nick. I think that was kind of the perfect, spiel to kind of wrap us up here today. And I know we did go over on time, and a huge thank you to everyone who hung around, and obviously a huge thank you to Nick here for being our host. I am going to go ahead and just share my screen real quick as we conclude here. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Please, for those of you who it was your first time, second, third time, register for our upcoming dates. We don't have anyone selected yet for our August 20th date, but be sure to follow us on social media and you'll be the first to know who our upcoming moderators are. But otherwise, again, huge thank you to everyone, and a huge round of applause and a cheers to Nick for being our gracious host this afternoon/evening. But thank you all for joining. Nick, if you have any other closing thoughts, feel free to share.
Yeah, no, just thanks for tuning in and chiming in. And, it's not easy. Right now it's tough, but I think, I'm excited about the creativity that's coming out. So my last thing is just stick with it, stay rocking. And obviously if there's any questions you have for me, definitely reach out. I'm happy to chat one-on-one just about any of this on the new sponsorship world.